Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics, continuing special session coverage, and I am delighted to bring you a voice that I've wanted to bring you for a long time. Mary Kogut, the CEO and president of the St. Louis Planned Parenthood chapter. Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thank you so much for having me.
I was very glad that we were able to come on. I just thank our executive producer, Rachel Dunn. She does a great job, and it was her point that, you know, this is an opinion and a point of view that I don't think a lot of folks hear in the state capitol often. And so I want to break down, there's this special session called On Abortion. I think we kind of know if there's a bill, and I assume there will be, it's going to be pretty similar to the one the House passed out this week. What is in that bill, and do you have an objection to it?
Well, first let me start by saying this is really unnecessary. The special session is not increasing the safety of women. Abortion is already one of the safest procedures in the nation. We already have in Missouri many restrictions, and we follow those. We're compliant with them. And we're the only state licensed abortion provider in the entire state of Missouri, serving 1.2 million women. So I believe this session is about further restricting abortion access, making it harder for us as providers and for medical doctors to choose to be providers. It's fiscally very expensive for taxpayers. And I don't see that even the bill proposed both through the Senate and through the House, whatever gets negotiated, is going to increase safety. And that's what this is supposed to be about.
So there's two parts of this special session that looks like to me they're covering. One is there was a court case in federal court that eliminated the reason you have to have admitting privileges if you are the doctor at an abortion clinic and a few other things. It looks like they're trying to put some of those regulations back in. What was that court case? And give me the quick rundown of that one and the one that you filed.
Absolutely. Let me start by telling you, Scott, about TRAP laws. TRAP laws are targeted restrictions of abortion providers. These are done in Missouri. They're done throughout the nation. They have no evidence-based, factual basis connected with safety.
Honestly, though, it looks to me like, I know that folks don't like to come out and say it because of judicial reasons or legislative intent, but most of these are to restrict abortion. And these are pro-life legislators that campaign on being pro-life or elected as pro-life, probably wanting to lower the number of abortions, right?
Right. Yeah. One point I want to make is that we're not opposed to regulations. We think medical care should be licensed. We believe it should be safe. We work every day to make sure our care is safe. We are opposed to restrictions that don't make any sense, that have nothing to do with health and safety of the woman. That's what TRAP restrictions are. And that's what the case through the Supreme Court, Whole Women's Health, was about. And our challenge here in Missouri, those are exactly what they were about, looking at particular restrictions. For us, it was looking at ambulatory surgical regulations, and that we have to be that in order to provide abortions, and also admitting privileges, that doctors had to have them at local hospitals in order to provide abortions. Neither of those have any connection to increasing the safety of abortion. That's why we challenged them, and we won. We won in federal court.
These restrictions, we had Representative Barnes on the show
Yes.
on a live broadcast this week. The ones he went through, having a plan if there's a problem, did not seem to be overly burdensome. As a person who, I don't even like going to the doctor. But those seem to be like they would not, either they exist already or they wouldn't be overly burdensome, that portion of it.
I agree with you. And this is why this session is unnecessary. We already have this. I'd like to tell you a little bit. Since our court case was decided in May, we've actually had an annual inspection. This was a very rigorous inspection.
How'd it go?
It went well. It was over 3 business days. We had 5 inspectors from the Department of Health come in. They looked at every facet of our care, including our complication data, our quality assurance data. They looked at all of our documentation, our training and preparation for our providers and for our staff.
Was that done this year?
It was done this year,
Under
May
the
of
Grimes
2017.
Got it.
Yes, and after the court case. So the point I want to make is that we still have regulations. We still have restrictions. They work in keeping patients safe. We comply. There's no need for more.
So the second part of this was about a St. Louis ordinance that was passed. You know, to me, it looks like there's a lot of folks that make pretty decent points. This session may be a stunt. It may be unnecessary. That's a lot of the folks that say it's not the pressing problem. The board bill in the city of St. Louis seemed to be, if you call one a stunt, you probably call the St. Louis City ordinance maybe is also a stunt. Can you really make that hold up in court, what the St. Louis City did? Are there people that aren't being rented apartments because they had an abortion? And how would anybody even know if they were?
I'm not a legal scholar.
Sure.
What I will say is that I think the value behind it is important, that we don't want to discriminate against men or women because of their reproductive choices. And
Is that a problem in the state right now?
well, we've heard
People
of
ask
some
abortion,
cases.
pro-life people, there's an epidemic of women being harmed at abortion clinics. They have a hard time answering that. Do people really discriminate against folks because they've had an abortion, and how would they know? Is that also a rise to, is it really a problem?
You know, I think it could be if somebody's working for an organization or agency that's opposed to either certain forms of contraception or to abortion, and they find out about a woman's personal choice. I guess it could be an issue. We look at it as an anti-discrimination bill, not a sanctuary bill.
Okay. There's one thing that I've always thought, and as I've gotten older, my views evolved on many things except the designated hitter. That's been very consistent. But when you talk about abortions, I know I probably know several women that have had abortions, but I know one that shared the story with me. It wasn't a flippant decision. I think sometimes in this debate, both sides, but especially maybe even pro-life folks like myself, will assume that somebody takes this decision lightly, and I found that not to be the case.
I absolutely agree with you. You know, 1 out of every 3 American women has had an abortion in her lifetime. That's a very big
That's a
statistic.
shocking number.
Well, what it tells you is that abortion is part of women's health. It's
Like an actual medical procedure
It's
of an
a medical
abortion in a
procedure,
clinic? I've had an
yes.
abortion, 1 in 3?
Yes, it's an actual medical procedure. It's a decision women make in the privacy of their own values, family, religion, however they go about making important decisions in your life. That's how they do it with abortion care too. And I'll tell you what we believe as Planned Parenthood. We believe in ensuring everyone has informed consent. They have information about all of their options, the benefits, the risks, what other options they might have, how to help them make a decision, looking at their support groups.
That might surprise people that all their options, including an adoption and all those things, are provided at the Planned Parenthood clinic.
Absolutely, they are. We do this with every medical care that we provide, whether it's birth control, testing and treatment for sexually transmitted infections, or abortion. We want to make sure every single patient is making a decision best for him or her, and that fits in with their life and their values.
I've had a lot of people I really respect defend Planned Parenthood's work, not just on abortion, but on the many other things you do. And just the simple hillbilly in me comes to, why don't you just not do the abortions and do all the other things? And I think, escape all the controversy.
Right. We won't abandon our patients, and we won't abandon women. We're the only state licensed provider in a state that has 1.2 million women of reproductive health care age. And that means that women who are making decisions about pregnancy would have nowhere to turn. We are not going to do that to patients. This is an important medical procedure. It's an option that is protected by the Supreme Court and protected by our Constitution. We want to make sure that we're here, and we want to make sure that it's safe and it's legal.
Let me ask you a question. This is kind of coming from the Rotunda in Jeff City. When you talk to people that are pro-life and you discuss this issue with them, that are earnest and sincere, I know there's people that demagogue both sides of this. When you really sit down and talk with them, do you kind of see where they come from? Do you start from the position of understanding how a person is pro-life?
I do understand it. I understand that we all make our own decisions from different directions, from the way we've been raised, our values, our religion, however we make these important decisions. So I absolutely do. What I also believe is that if we're really interested in reducing abortion, let's look at something other than restrictions. Restrictions aren't the way to reduce abortion. We can reduce unintended pregnancy through better health care, better birth control methods, better access to those, more comprehensive sex education. These are many things that Missouri has chosen not to address and not to work towards. They would help our citizens.
So in a state where Missouri, I know there's some folks that say polls and things, but I see the legislators, we follow their campaigns at the Missouri Times. These people campaign loudly on being pro-life. It's one of their top things. If they're not pro-gun first, they're pro-life first. They get elected, they sort of do the policies they said they were going to campaign to. What do you say to folks in the state, not the legislators, just regular people watching that make their decision on who they vote for? How do you make a pro-choice or a cause to elect legislators who maybe don't see it as the priority or are pro-choice?
It's so interesting to me. When I look at some of the recent polls, the ones that even have been done since November, they actually show that Missourians, over 60%, support abortion being a private decision that women make, and they want it to remain a constitutionally protected
Well, there's a libertarian
decision.
argument to that too. I mean, maybe you're seeing that manifest itself.
Well, I don't know. I do know that not only that, they support Planned Parenthood and they support us being in federal programs like Medicaid and Title X. And I think it's that, in general, most of us don't vote on just one issue.
Sure.
We see a whole myriad of things that are important to us and that are priorities in our lives.
Well, Ms. Coder, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your views. We hope you'll come back on This Week in Missouri Politics, because my hunch is this is not the last time we'll be discussing this issue in the state of Missouri.
You know, it's probably not, and I'd love to come back. And Scott, what I'd love to see is that we would start talking about expanding health care, expanding birth control, decreasing maternal mortality, making sure that we're really doing things that are good for the citizens of Missouri.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
We'll be right back. Representative Diane Franklin making her This Week in Missouri Politics debut after this.
My name is Eric Philippi. I'm a veteran, a carpenter, and a father. When Eric Greitens said he was going to change politics as usual, folks like me didn't think the first thing he'd do as governor was take dead aim at our jobs and our families' livelihoods by working to repeal prevailing wage. Call Governor Greitens. Tell him to protect prevailing wage and to protect my family, not destroy it.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads, because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
Nobody likes power outages, including us. That's why Ameren, Missouri is investing in new equipment and smarter technology to reduce outages and keep pace with future needs. And it's working. We're in the top 25% in the nation for reliability. And on average, our rates are 18% lower than other Midwestern states. Making sure the power's there when you need it. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. We're glad to have some new folks on the Opinion Maker panel this week. Mevy Mead, the Director of Policy for Planned Parenthood Advocates. Thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Representative Stacey Newman, thank you so much. I just think you were made for the This Week in Missouri Politics Opinion Maker panel. Welcome here.
Thank you.
Representative Diane Franklin, thank you so much for joining us. First time over, we really appreciate you coming up and joining us this week.
I appreciate the invite.
Representative Gene Evans, friend of the show, glad to have you back.
Good to be back.
The House bill come out. Representative Franklin, it was your bill. They really did a lot of work too. Looks like you had a lot of input on how this ended up. What is in the bill the House passed?
Sure. So health and safety standards, basically for women who use abortion facilities. We, from the court's decision, we needed to separate the ambulatory surgical centers from abortion facilities, so we wanted to be sure that those health and safety standards were in there. And a point that I want to make is that the House members of the House have carried different pieces of this legislation over the years. And so this was an opportunity to take our ideas from what the Senate sent us, put our ideas, the legislation that we've basically passed out of the House time and time again, and put it into place to meet the governor's call.
Representative, there was also some parts of this dealing with the city of St. Louis's ordinance they passed, basically creating a protective class almost.
Right.
What did the House come up with on that? And is this the bill the Senate's going to just have to take up and pass whenever they come back?
Well, I hate to predict what the Senate is going to do. That would be a good business to be in. So I think that, you know, in general, we have so many different protected classes. I'm not aware of women being discriminated against because of their reproductive choices. I'm against discrimination of any kind, particularly against women. I think that we all are. It seemed like I didn't really get what the point was, but we did have people from the faith community telling us that this was a problem for them and asking us to address it.
Representative Newman, I thought your speech this week in the House was one of the best ones I've heard you give. It was a very personal speech about, and I think it speaks to a lot of things. I've heard a lot of people on the other side of the aisle say, this is not the government's business. This is not the government's business. Your speech was about that. It was a different tone. I thought it was one of the best ones you've delivered.
Thank you very much. And I hope I speak for every Missouri woman, because making these type of healthcare choices, and women have abortions for all kinds of reasons, from all kinds of miscarriages gone wrong. This is a common, procedure that physicians and hospitals use, to, pregnancies that have gone horribly wrong. And I think about my own college-age daughter and other women across the state who depend on abortion care, depend on their hospitals, their physicians, to do the right, procedure that, that they need. And for the state to come in with no medical expertise or background or even facts to interfere in those private personal decisions that, again, we're talking about a medical procedure, and we don't have an OBGYN anywhere in the House or Senate. So for us to interfere, we are being very punitive, not just to women who need these procedures for all kinds of reasons, but we're also being punitive to the medical community.
Let me ask you this, the opposition to the bill, Planned Parenthood has been part of that pushing backwards on it from the policy perspective. Some of these regulations don't seem that onerous, and my assumption is you probably already have some of these things in place.
So yeah, I think this special session is unnecessary, it's expensive, it's dangerous. I think, as Representative Franklin just said, these are pieces of legislation that legislators have been pushing for a long time, and they're legislators who honestly oppose access to abortion. That's what they're about. They're trying to restrict access to abortion using these trap laws. So they're targeted regulations against abortion providers. They single abortion out from any other medical procedure, more complicated, more complex procedures, for this additional regulation, which creates a trap so that it's harder for the provider to provide the service, and it's harder for the patient to access it. And that's what the courts have said. That's so-called the courts are motivating this legislation. Well, the court said, no, you can't put these additional regulations on if you can't prove that they're going to improve safety, and they haven't been able to prove that. In fact, they make access more difficult and therefore more dangerous.
But to call a spade, yes, I think there's a lot of legislators that get elected more every year that are pro-life. They're proudly pro-life. I think they definitely, the underlying thing is they want to eliminate abortion in the state of Missouri and everywhere they can. I mean, I think they don't say that for legal reasons, but I mean, they are elected at some point. The pro-life cause that continues to win these elections. How do you push back against that?
I'm really glad you brought that up. These political labels, I don't think, are serving the people of Missouri or this whole debate. Actually, much of this debate has been politicized, and it's not really about what matters to real patients who come into Planned Parenthood, or our neighbors, or our state. That label of pro-life, actually, when you look at the polls, or people who would identify as such in a poll, who wouldn't? Pro-life, yes, we're pro-life. But when you ask, do you support the government telling you and your family and your doctor what to do when facing an unintended pregnancy, they say, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to tell my neighbor what they can do. They support Roe v. Wade. They support preventing government intrusion into their personal lives. And so using the labels isn't helpful. It's talking about what's actually happening here, which in this special session are unnecessary, dangerous restrictions on abortion.
Well, Representative Reagan, I mean, honestly, these most folks, the vast majority of people that are elected in the Missouri legislature are ardently pro-life, proud of it, they run on it. Yeah. What's wrong with saying, yeah, we're trying to restrict abortion in the state of Missouri?
Well, I'm going to take you back to caring about women and their health care in the state of Missouri. So what Planned Parenthood provides is just a silo of health care. Most women suffer from other medical issues, cardiac issues, diabetes, COPD, many others. So whole women's health is very important to be able to provide in the state of Missouri. Looking at the woman as a total person, if the reason that she goes to seek health care is because of a reproductive reason, then primary care docs can help with that. And what they can do in that position as well is evaluate the total physical health of that woman. Things like heart disease, COPD, diabetes can lead to debilitating physical condition. Identified early, treatment can be put in place, prevention can be put in place, and follow-up care can be put in place.
That's right. They may be unnecessary, but they're not that burdensome, the things that you came up with from special session, right? I mean, these are not restrictions.
Well, they're already in place in any other medical situation where you are.
Well, you don't hear doctors saying, you know, because they are required to have follow-up care for a patient with some of these other illnesses, you don't hear them saying, well, that's preventing people from seeking care. You know, a doctor who treats heart disease or diabetes, those things are regulated.
Well, what's wrong with just saying we want fewer abortions? That's what we ran on. That's what we were elected to do.
That's a separate issue.
We're trying to make fewer abortions.
I think that's a separate issue. What this bill dealt with was women's health, and that's what we were trying to address. Because, as you said, there are I have many constituents who feel like abortion should be safe and legal. We're trying to make it more safe.
President Clinton said safe, legal, and rare, right?
Well, let me jump in. We already know that abortion procedures are safe, and we already know they're legal and they're constitutionally protected. But when we talk about other, you know, healthcare access, you know, Missouri has over and over refused to expand Medicaid or any healthcare access for women. We know this new federal bill that is going to, you know, we'll be faced with and change quite a bit is also restricting access to health care for women. There's nothing in the bills we're doing in this special session that increases access to health care for women, and in fact, it penalizes them. Back to, you say we all run on, or people run on pro-life issues, particularly in the legislature, and win. I want to point out that the majority of us are elected in primary elections when very few people vote. So the majority of us are really not elected by the majority of people that we represent. And we do know that, you know, 1 in 3 women access abortion care for, again, a number of reasons.
That statistics to me seems high. Now this is a rural, white, Christian, male, conservative saying that number surprised me. Do you think that surprises most people?
No, not at all, because, you know, it doesn't surprise women because we understand our reproductive health care. I mean, most of us sitting here on this panel, I've been to an OBGYN.
I'm the one that hasn't.
We understand it. But again, this is, I mean, like I pointed out on the floor, you know, abortion is also a procedure that is routinely done after, you know, different stages of a miscarriage. We women know that. We understand that. Miscarriage is very, very common. It's also common when you've got a pregnancy that's gone horribly wrong or a fetus that has died. I mean, these are uncomfortable things to talk about, but they're private. They're private personal medical procedures that are done in the care of a physician. And again, for the legislature to step in is really unnecessary.
Sure, wrap it up with
those miscarriages, those pregnancies gone wrong, those are taken care of in a hospital setting for the most part. They're not taken care of at a Planned Parenthood clinic. Those are done within the confines of that OBGYN care. So lumping those into abortion statistics
Give me a
is
prediction time here.
disingenuous.
Does the final product pass federal court scrutiny?
I think that the federal court gave us the permission, and Sachs said that the legislature needs to act to be sure that you can put regulations in place.
Does it pass muster?
Yes.
Does this?
In no way. I mean,
It's a moving standard right now.
Well, in no way. We already know with these constitutional decisions, again, with even the, you know, Judge Sachs, he actually told us to repeal our current regulations that are on the books. I've got the bill, and of course, it's not going to move.
Does it pass scrutiny?
Doesn't improve health and safety, so it won't pass.
One more prediction. Is this the last special session the legislature is willing to participate in? Without an Eco Devo project or something truly, is it like Sylvie said, just because your bill died, that's not extraordinary? Is this the last one the legislature puts up with?
I think if he calls one during veto session,
Interesting.
we will be there.
What do you think?
I think the House will do what the Speaker asked us to do.
What do you think?
Who knows? I mean, we already are spending $20,000 a day. We're into day 8 already. Who knows when this one's going to end?
But if this was something you supported, would that $20,000 be that big a deal?
Yes, I mean, I think it is always a big deal. I mean, you know, we're supposed to be caring about our budget as we're, you know, cutting poor people off of so many programs. So yeah, the money is a very big deal.
Here's an idea. $20,000 a day buys well women exams for 100 women. If we want to help health and safety, let's spend our money that way.
Let's talk about a U.S. Senate race. Your congresswoman is discussing running right now. The Attorney General has been encouraged. I guess there's other rich people encouraging, telling other folks what to do with their money. It's an interesting thing. How do you see the Senate race shaping up? And it looks like to me, in a day where we get our news from our phone and from cable news sites, Claire McCaskill probably does better every day Donald Trump does poorly. I'm not sure he's doing poorly in Missouri.
No, he's not. And, you know, I love Josh Hawley. I have nothing against Josh Hawley. We don't know that much about him as a how he governs, because he's only been in office for a few months, but he's doing a good job so far. But Ann Wagner is far and away a better qualified candidate. I mean, she supports the military, veterans. She's done a lot for women. She has done things to end trafficking. And some of the innovative ways she has worked to solve some of these financial problems between institutions and protecting consumers, I think she's a powerhouse, and I'd love to see her as a senator.
It's interesting to me to see that, and I mean, being from out of state Missouri yourself, these rich folks from St. Louis telling other folks what to do. It's an interesting, it's interesting dynamic, you know.
Yeah, I think whoever emerges is going to be great. They're going to do great, and I think they'll win that seat. Ann Wagner has spent a lot of time in Missouri.
But Donald Trump has to be doing well to beat Claire McCaskill. Is that true? Do you think even if Donald Trump starts doing poorly in the state, that a Republican can still win that race?
Look at Georgia.
You know, I do. I do. I think that
Missouri's
that
just that
same
red.
wave
Yes.
that brought Donald Trump will bring the next U.S. senator.
So you know Claire McCaskill. Does she run?
Does she run?
Does she run for re-election?
Oh, she's already said she's running. We already know that. We already know, too, there's going to be a large primary on the Republican side. And again, going back to her last re-election, you know, those primaries tend to...
Wagner and Josh Hawley are not Todd Aiken, though. Fair enough.
Well, we don't know yet. When someone says something, again, we didn't know Todd Aiken was Todd Aiken until he spoke.
Oh, a few of us Republicans kind of
Yeah.
knew.
Oh, yes.
What do you
So-
I think she runs and to me, she's probably the best politician in this state.
I think she really connects with people where they are and what matters in their everyday life. And let's not forget that Kander came within 3 points in that really tough year. So Missouri, when you look statewide, when a politician really connects with them where they are and they understand what women's health matters to them, and they understand what matters to our economy, that I think Claire does all of those things.
I always
And-
find it funny when Kander tells folks he went and told a progressive message out state Missouri. I think he ran against Roy Blunt's wife and kids, you know. Just saying, but with a minute left, who won the week?
I got to give it to my colleague here, Representative Diane Franklin, for carrying that bill. She did a great job.
Who won the week?
Well, I'm going to say Jay Barnes.
He had a very good week. And we enjoyed having him on Facebook Live on This Week in Missouri Politics. Who won the week,
I'm
Representative?
going to say Governor Greitens. I mean, I think this special session is doing quite a bit for his presidential future campaign.
Who won the week?
So speaking of tax dollars, I think Nicole Galloway, fighting to get people's refunds back, she's winning the week.
I've got a trio, but I'll end it with Governor Holden. John Gaskin and Jimmy Loomis, two just rising stars on the Democrat side, were a big part of this NAACP event. Honored Governor Holden, probably the nicest, probably the best statesman right now in the state for his lifetime achievement. It was a really cool thing to watch. I want to thank all of you guys for joining us. Hope you'll all be back on This Week in Missouri Politics, and we will see you next week on This Week in Missouri Politics. This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you by Spire and Sterling Bank.